Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to my studio. As I've been talking about for quite some time now, we are actually in the process of rebuilding the studio. Now, the purpose here is not to talk about what I do specifically. This episode is about how to create your own innovation studio. Whatever your focus area is for innovation, I am a firm believer that you need a dedicated space. That could be a corner of a bedroom. When I first started out, literally was in the master bedroom. I had a little desk in the corner. I've now have a dedicated space. I originally built this space 8 years ago, and now we're in kind of the first major refresh as I move beyond just simply using it as my podcast and YouTube studio. So let me give you just a quick tour of what it is today. Now, this will be a series of videos over time, not going to be all stacked up together because I'm going to shoot these as we are progressing. This is coming up in the middle of August of 24. We got about 75% of the stuff moved out of here. The next phase is ripping out the old carpeting. We're going to all hardwood floors, easier to move equipment around, that type of thing. But if you've been a longtime follower of the podcast and a longtime viewer of the YouTube videos, this may be the view of the studio that you are most familiar with. When the studio was first built, this was my backdrop camera, just as it does today, would be facing me. Now, on the wall here, this is anechoic fabric stretched over anechoic fiberglass underneath for sound management and sound suppression. These are, I don't know what the proper sound studio term is, but basically these are to tune the room. So I actually hired a professional studio designer builder to come in and do this work for me, and he tuned these. So these are custom built for the room themselves. And basically this purpose is for audio recording and video recording. You don't end up with just muffled dead noise if you only do suppression. So we have suppression, and then we have this tuning, which brings back a little bit of that voice sparkle. Now, we have these all over the room, depending on flat surfaces. These will all stay. The sound suppression will stay. But we are changing, for instance, suspended lighting from the ceiling. Now, this will be kind of what I would refer to as the podcast YouTube studio end of the studio space. And this here is actually my workstation that I work at. And this is where my Yamaha TF1 soundboard normally sits. It's moved out because we're in the middle of getting ready to start ripping flooring out. So the videos that you most recently have been watching with the monitor behind me is me sitting literally right there and recording it as the rest of the room is being modified. And so this is kind of the end of the studio that most of you would be familiar with if you've been watching. And again, the purpose for this end of the studio space is for audio recording and for the YouTube video creation. I also historically have done a number of Zoom meetings. I had a green screen on the other side of this where the camera literally sits. And if you had done Zoom meetings with me during the early days of COVID, and you saw the view from my ranch here of Rocky Mountain National Park, that was projected onto that green screen. So I'm just trying to orientate you for this space. Now, the nice thing about this space is it's about 1,200 square feet, lots of closet storage. This is used primarily to keep track of all the paperwork and my historicals, drafts of books that are in process, etc. In this other closet here is where shipping occurs for people who order my book or the card decks over from innovation.tools. You can laugh. That is actually the total extent of the storefront operates out of that closet. So not a big operation. Again, you do that to drive revenue. All the money we make, profit after, the out-of-pocket costs for the books and producing the card decks, all the profits go to charity. So this is this end of the studio. Let's take a look at the other end of the studio. So this is the other half of the studio. Historically, this has just been used for storage and other things, but we have cleaned it all out and now are in the process of, again, all of this carpeting comes out. It's coming into all hardwood floors. I'm going to get a bunch of comments. Oh, the echoing from the hardwood floors, etc. Well, part of the reason we're taking the carpeting out is not just making it easier to move things around, but also for my allergies. As you probably know, I have a chronic cough condition, and it's from allergies, primarily dust and dust mites. And carpeting is horrible. Over a handful of years ago, we did the house where we ripped out all the carpeting. I didn't want to mess with the studio at that time, but as you can tell from my voice, the cough, and that's gotten bad. So we're going to rip all this carpeting out. That's actually the next step. And then after that, we're going to actually mount a lighting grid from the ceiling. So there'll be no light stands, no cables on the floor at all. Now, what's going to happen at this end of the studio? The current plans for this end of the studio is where my prototyping equipment will go. So that will be like 3D printers, laser cutters, things that I use, my Adrenos, all of those, any of those types of things that I use for building prototypes or building up concepts. Many cases, I'm working with small startup companies, and I've come up with an idea. I have found it as useful to create a prototype, put it in their hands so they can actually feel it and see it. Now, I will tell you that my prototypes are extremely rough, and it's just to get the ideas. In some cases, it may just be a square block of wood, just to give them a feel of size and shape. But that's what's going to happen at this end. At the far end, that's actually going to be a little Zoom collaboration studio. So we're going to put the TV down there on the wall, I'm not sure if it's going to be a table with chairs or a small couch. And that's where I'll be taking most of the Zoom calls throughout the day. So I've got the studio at this end, and I've got the Zoom capabilities down here. The one nice thing about this particular space is, and you can see it through the door, is actually I have a private patio that goes out to the outside. So it makes it extremely nice from that perspective. And in this case, this end of the room, nothing has really been done. It's blank walls at this point. And Mike, the guy who designed and built this side of the studio, for the podcasting and the YouTube work that I've been doing so far, will actually be coming in here probably in another month or so and look at these walls and then determine what we need to do to retune this into the studio. But again, my vision for this is for the space where I can do literally everything that I need to do, from designing, innovating, ideating, building up early concept prototypes, and not so much for my own ideas at this point. I do have some ideas that I'm working on, but the majority of the work that I do in here is for you. And for those of you who've reached out to me looking for help, companies that I'm affiliated with or that I'm on their advisory boards for, whatever, that's the work I will be doing here in the studio. Keeps me active. I find that really engaging. But what's going to happen now again, this is going to be probably between now and I'm hoping to have this pretty much locked down and ready to operate starting January 1 or right after CES. That's the timeline that we're planning on, but it is dependent on a lot of things that have all got to come together. But I'm going to show you the process of how I think about designing my studio, my innovation studio, just like an artist studio, just like a music studio. In this case, this is my innovation studio. And my creative output comes in the form of the podcast, the YouTube videos, prototyping, ideas, coming up with new tech, new things, working with inventors, innovators, creatives from around the world. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. This is the generic space. When you're building your own innovation studio, you're kind of stuck with whatever space you have. This was already here when I bought the house. It was one of the things that attracted me to it. It's at the far end of the house. It's away from everything else that's going on. There's actually a breezeway you have to walk through to get to this space. So it's quiet. The only negative is right below me is the garage. So if anybody takes any of the cars in or out, that will cause noise. And so there's just a little coordination whenever I'm recording an episode. So if you have questions, if you're doing your own work on your own studios, post them down below. If you've got suggestions for my studio, things to do differently. For one thing, for instance, is I used to have shelves in here. I've gotten rid of all the bookcases, and I'm going to rolling tool chest, the really nice high-end butcher block top tool chest with lots of drawers for all of my equipment. One dedicated for all my audio, my microphones, etc., for recording. Another for all the video work. Another dedicated to my Adrenos and all of those, my hardware parts kits. And who knows what else we will build in here. So if you have suggestions, send them over. Become part of and track the progress as we go forward. And again, I'm a firm believer to have a dedicated space. It doesn't need to be a dedicated room like this. It can be at the corner of a master bedroom. It could be a closet in your house. But have some place that when you walk in, you mentally are telling yourself, it's time to create. Okay? With that, I'm going to wrap this up. I've been trying to keep these things short, but once I get started, I can't stop because I get so excited about this. But before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss any of the episodes, whether it's this or any of the other pieces. Again, we're on about an every other week process of putting out new content. So, because we're kind of trying to take a little bit of a summer break. We just got back from Seattle. But subscribe here or wherever you get your content, whether it's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your content. And we'll be back soon with another episode. And if you've got your suggestions, again, post them in the comments. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.